A thermometer of success is merely the jealousy of the malcontents. Salvador Dali, Spanish surrealist artist. All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Do me a favor, folks. If you enjoy this show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. Today, I'm doing another Liberty Dad Memoirs. This is my series where I share stories from my life more so than, news clips and stuff like that. And then I connect them to a topic. It's a way for you, the audience, to get to know me just a little bit better and then also understand kind of what is it that's driving my thinking. So today, I'm discussing judging and demanding results. I'm going to give you some about three stories today from that I experienced that I think will help you understand where I'm coming from when I'm talking about things, when I'm being critical. Some of you might even be surprised. In fact, it's funny. The other day, I was on social media and somebody was like, they asked the question like, do you act like this online, act in person like you do online, something like that. And I was like, well, actually, I'm a little bit worse, as it turns out. I said, especially if I'm your project manager. If I'm your project manager for, like, I'll deliver, but there's a good chance that I'm going to be a jerk about it. So, and I don't know, not on purpose. Like, it's just, that's just how I am. I'm very, about the results. Now, we talked about resulting a couple episodes ago, right? And resulting is basically where you judge the quality of a decision based on the outcome of, of an action, right? The outcome of something, the results. And that's not a good thing. And then today, now I want to talk about like, okay, let's talk about results. It's like, how do we judge results? And so what motivated me to talk about this? Well, again, it follows episode 414, The Art of Not Regretting Your Vote and Other Decisions. And so I thought, oh, this is a good follow up to it. And my Liberty fam out there, people in the party, the Libertarian Party, I think they need to hear this and I think they need to raise their standards. Too many of us focus on the wrong things and not the right things. And I think what that does is it gives credence to this idea that we're just a social club. Right. And I think part of it, I really do. I think if we were to learn how to focus on talking about like results and what people delivered and making sure they're tangible, those kind of things, I think we would get away from this shadow of being called a social club. But right now, a lot of the criticism that people have is just like, did you hear what so and so said? It's very mean girl like, like very juvenile. And so this is one of the reasons, like, and I've been critical of things in the past. Like I've been critical of critics and they're like, dude, and they make this false assumption that I must be supporting who they're opposing. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. I just think that your criticism is terrible. Like there's and this happens all the time. This is not like limited to the Libertarian Party. Like people do this. They'll criticize a politician for something. We see it all the time. Like remember Mitt Romney, since he's in the news, he's like leaving or whatever. Well, remember when people were like, Mitt Romney was running and they were like, he bullied a gay kid in high school. And everybody's like, like it is like you were supposed to be angry about this. And it's like, well, okay, he's like 50 years old or something like that at the time. He was like 50 or something. Maybe I think he's about 50, somewhere in his 50s. It's like, if he hasn't changed since high school, that represents a problem. And if the best I can do to criticize him is to go back to his high school days over something that's unfortunately common, then maybe, like, then it would suggest that he's definitely changed in character. And that in itself makes it no longer relevant. But again, that was criticizing something that didn't really matter, right? Like if it had been like a couple of years prior, right? Like, or maybe his son was doing it. Like maybe he had a son in school and his son was doing it and getting away with it, and it wasn't dealing with it. Then sure, you could have that criticism, right? But this is what I mean. Like people just criticize people for the wrong things, and um I don't think I think that's unhelpful. And then another reason is just, this is part of my memoirs, and it helps people understand where I'm coming from when I'm critical of my peers, whether they're a candidate or whether they're in leadership. And I've been critical of pretty much everyone on some level, because we all have things that we can do better, right? We all deliver a result, and we should be able to look back and say, yeah, that one I could have done better. And I think it's up to us, if we want better, to demand better. And so I want people to understand where I'm coming from when I make and like, let me tell you, in the Libertarian Party of Florida, I think I've criticized since like 2017. I've criticized every single one of the chairs except for one. And I probably just missed something. And I'm not like, it's not like I'm saying, oh, I just criticize him to criticize him. Like, I mean, it's, I think, legitimate criticism. I can look back a few years later and say, yeah, that was good criticism. I stand by that. Right. It's not like later on I kind of mature a little bit and I go, yeah, that was kind of dumb. Like that's not what we're talking about. And I've criticized a lot of the other leadership in the Libertarian Party of Florida. In the Libertarian Party, the national party, I've criticized literally every single chair since 2017. So for something, and a lot of the members that are on the executive committee there, and I've criticized plenty of people that run for office, and not everybody likes it, and that's fine. I get it, but I'm actually coming from a good place. So the three areas that we want to kind of focus on today, we're going to talk. So I'm going to tell you some stories, and we're going to focus on delivering quality. We're going to talk about deliver results, not excuses. Uh, Champion your successes. I got stories for each one of these, and then I just got a few kind of like at the end, kind of like follow up things to talk about. So let's get into the first story. So deliver quality. So a while back, before I was into the party, I was my wife and I do real estate. She's a real estate agent and an investor. So we're the flippers that people complain about sometimes. And I had joined the board of a local real estate organization. Um, and I joined as their secretary. And when I say I joined, I mean like I ran, I got elected, I was now on their board. Okay, and it was one of the, I think this particular real estate organization is the longest existing one in Jacksonville. It's not quite the largest, but it was largest for quite a while, and they have a lot of connections to a lot of, big names in the real estate industry. And so I was on the board, and one of the things that I said, we would have a monthly meeting where several hundred people would show up, and we would bring in guest speakers. And a lot of these speakers, they had some sort of program like, hey, if you buy this program, it's going to help you with your real estate, blah, 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 whatever. So we would bring a lot of these guru type people in. And I said, I think we can work on the logistics of our meeting, because it seems to like people are trying to come in this one single door and there's like big crowd. And so I literally whipped out, like on my spare time, I grabbed Google SketchUp, which is like a 3D software. And I literally drew a layout of the building, or of the room. And then I said, all right, we're going to put a table here. We're going to do this. We're going to, and I kind of set it up so that we could say, all right, this is the flow of traffic, and this is how we'll keep the congestion down. This is how we'll better identify who's there, and all these good things. I also said, well, if we're going to do this, if we're going to go through the effort of improving our meetings, we should make sure that our meetings are like they start on time, which is kind of funny considering this podcast has struggled with that. But I said we should start on time. So people should know. I think it was 6:30. 6:30 on the money, we start. And so what I would do and I got this from Toastmasters, right? Like if you go to Toastmasters, you're going to learn more than just public speaking. You're going to learn about how to manage a meeting and all this other good stuff. And so what I did was I came up and I said, all right, at six, I think I said like at 6:28, I was going to start a song from my laptop, and that song would coordinate with a timer on the screen. That way, people in there would know, hey, the music is starting, therefore this meeting is going to start in just a couple of minutes. And then I would get on the mic like about 30 seconds before and I would say, hey, we're getting ready to get started. Please take your seats, blah, blah, blah. So we would basically initiate the meeting um, ahead of time. And then once the music was over, then I would be on the mic, and then I actually had it kind of like scripted out, like at this time we'll do this, at this time we'll do this. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to MC, and then I will introduce the president of our organization, and then I will hand off the microphone to him, and then he's supposed to do this at this time, and this, and just kind of like lay out almost like it was a ceremony. But I wanted to make sure that people could come in and have an expectation of the meeting. And so one day I get there a bit late. I ran into some traffic and I got there late. And I was the one that set up the audio video equipment. And so I get there and I'm setting things up and I'm a little bit frustrated because I don't like being late to where I'm supposed to be. And the speaker that we had, he brought in his laptop and he wanted to connect his audio. And he's a big name speaker. I don't remember his name, but he was a big name. And we were having trouble getting his audio working. So I was like so I kind of took on his laptop and I was like, hey, um, let me see what's going on here, blah, 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 blah. And then I thought I had it, about figured out. And again, I'm still in this frustrated state because I'm late and I don't like being late. Now I'm dealing with an audio problem, which is gonna make me even more late. So he starts saying, "Oh, hold on, let me do this." And I was like, "No, no, no, hold on, I think I got it." And so now this is his laptop. And so we start arguing, and I finally, like, we're kind of like arguing over control of, again, his laptop. And finally I got upset and I yelled at him, like literally yelled at him. I was like, dude, I'm the expert here. I was like, leave me alone or something like that. I don't remember exactly what I said. I did say something to the effect of, I'm the expert. You sit to the side and let me work. This is kind of kind of the gist of it. And it's embarrassing to think about, honestly, because there's no way to behave to people. So and then he said something back. He was like, you need to settle down. This is my laptop or something like that. Some boomer thing, like, oh boy, you better settle down. Right? This is my laptop, whatever. And so I backed off, let him take care of it. We ended up getting it worked out. We got started. I don't remember if we started on time or that day or not. I think we did, but so after the meeting, I was kind of embarrassed because I'm like, I think I may be the only officer of this organization ever to have literally yelled at our own guest, the person that we invited to come in and speak. I may be the only one that has done this. And so now I'm kind of embarrassed because I'm like, well, that's not a good look for the organization. Like, this is embarrassing and it's not really a good thing. And this is where you might be surprised. Like, people might think that I'm just like this carefree, nice guy, never gets mad, yells. No, when things aren't going my way, when I'm working on a project, I could get very mean. This is what I say when I tell people I can actually be meaner in person than I am online. Because online, I have time to think through. I can type that tweet and then I can look at it and be like, you know, maybe I shouldn't. But when it's in person, I don't really have that time. And and if I'm in a frustrated state or if I'm rushing or if my mind is somewhere else and you're distracting me, then, to some degree, whatever comes out is what comes out. And it's not always pleasant. So I can be meaner in person. So for anybody that's like, whoa, DL is just an internet tough guy. No, I'm a real life tough guy. That's really like what it ends up being. So anyway, so I go, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, God, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, man, this is going to look bad. He's probably going to tell them. They're going to be pissed at me, like whatever. So after the meeting, I go up to him and I was like, "Hey, man, I want to apologize." And he stopped me and he's like, "No, no, no." He's like, "Stop." He's like, "You're good." He's like, "I get it." And then he started asking me some other questions that were completely unrelated to anything. It was like a regular conversation, right? And then we had just like this normal conversation. And he got it. He understood what I was trying to accomplish. Like he understood that I was trying to deliver a quality meeting. He understood that. And people that want quality understand this. And they understand that the details matter. And that sometimes means it sometimes results in people getting angry and getting a bit snippy, which is what I did. But I think this is one of the things that we need to whenever you're doing something, deliver quality. I like my good name, so I like to deliver quality, and I get embarrassed if I deliver something that I know isn't of the level that I should be able to do. Like if I'm doing something brand new, maybe it's the first woodworking piece that I'm working on. And I know that I'm using some tools that I've not really used before. I'm doing some techniques that I've maybe never tried before. I can offer myself a little grace and say, okay, well, next time I'll get better because, I'm still learning right now. But if it's something that I know how to do, then I don't really have a lot of flexibility with myself. I'm like, nope, this is not good. I should have done better. So you always, always should deliver quality. And you should be thinking about quality, and you should surround yourself by people that want to deliver quality. Now, what is that quality? Well, it depends on what you're doing. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're running for office, then quality might be, hey, when I got a chance to speak on the media, how well did I do? Did I sound like a rambling buffoon? Or did I sound like somebody that knows what they're talking about, that could garner the trust of voters? If it's, if you're the chair of an organization, what did you do to bring the organization forward so that the next person behind you can take the torch and go to the next level, right? Like that's the kind of like you have to think about like what role am I in? What are the expectations? And then now let me deliver quality upon these things. And you have to think, do not allow yourself to say, well, this is good enough, because good enough, like I understand people say, well, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. I'm going to tell you right now, the people that are the most successful are like, they understand that there's a time and a place for that. And oftentimes that's not the time. It's like, because people use it too much. For all kind, and I think it's just out of laziness. Like, they don't want to have to deliver. And I try to deliver quality in most everything that I do. Now, sometimes I look back and I say, okay, well, this is good enough. Maybe it's a new project that I'm working on. And, like I said, with the woodworking example, and maybe I have to temper myself and say, okay, well, you're not skilled in this area. So you're going to have to accept good enough. But if it's another area where I can deliver, then and I should have been able to deliver, then I have to be honest with myself and say, "No, this was not good enough. I did not deliver, and I should be held accountable for it." Okay. So let me yes, somebody in the comments here, uh, that Liberty lady, Liberty Dad struggles with starting on time. Yes, I do. And believe you me, now look, let me tell you something about this starting on time business. Yes, I struggle with starting on time in the mornings because there's a lot going on. I don't use that as an excuse, because behind the scenes, what you guys don't see is all the stress in me. Like if I say I'm going to be here at 7:30 running a show, and it's like every minute past 7:30, I'm stressing more and more and more. And and so you don't get to see that, but I am, because I'm like, look, I told people I was going to deliver, you know, and I want to deliver and I want it to be quality. If I tell somebody the meeting starts at 6:30, the meeting starts at 6:30, because I want to value their time. And people will know when you're valuing their time, because you will honor your word on when you're going to start and when you're going to end, and if there's an end time. And so I do actually stress out quite a bit when I'm behind. And sometimes, I'm trying to work out the perfect schedule, the perfect routine so that I can get everything that needs to be done and be ready to go by 7:30. And there's a lot going on here. I'm not making excuses. Again, I'm just telling you there are challenges and I get it. So, all right. So let's move on. So how about another story? Because I got three of them. That's one. We got two more. Deliver results, not excuses. Now, this is a fun one because this actually happened to me when I was in my 20s. Um, the real estate story was in my 30s. So in my 20s, I was working for a fastener company, and we had just gotten a new customer out in Pennsylvania. It was a big customer. They had like three manufacturing plants, and then there was a manufacturing plant out in Ohio. And we were taking over the business of a prior supplier, and we had to do it while they were still running their production lines. And so my job was to ensure. So my job is at the time in general was to make sure that a production line always had all of the fasteners that they needed at every single station. So let's say you had a production line that had 10 stations on it, 10 workstations, 10 different people working at 10 different workstations. And each workstation might have, you know, somewhere between one or maybe even zero, but one or two types of fasteners that they used at that station, all the way up to like maybe 20, right? For maybe different builds and stuff like that. So my job was to go to each workstation and ensure that, they had a bin of parts. And then there was like, the idea was just in time. If you've never heard of it, that basically means when they're, the idea being when they grab that last piece from the bin, maybe I'm sliding in a new bin full of parts. So you have just enough so that they don't have too many, but so that they're not overflowing with parts, but also that you don't have too few either. So that was my role. And so then we got this company now where or we got this business now where we're going to switch over. So that means we had to identify where all the parts were. It was a huge undertaking. It was very, very massive effort. And they brought out a whole bunch of, employees for like several weeks. Might have even been a couple of months that we were there. Tensions were high at certain points. That would be the only place that I ever really acted up. Like there was, this is a side story. One time I got so angry because we were working very long hours and I started getting frustrated about something and I was trying to key something in on the keyboard and I was just so tired and I kept making mistakes and I got so angry that I started beating my fist on the keyboard, yanked the keyboard out of the little socket in the back, stormed out into the warehouse, and then launched it across into a big, huge bin. Right, like I got very, very angry. You see what I mean? Like I'm telling you, like there is a DL that is very rough to deal with sometimes, but that's not this part of the story. So what ended up happening was we had been working some crazy hours, and like at our worst, I calculated that we worked 96 hours in a 6-day period. And that was excluding the 45-minute drive to and from our hotel because the facility was kind of like in this small town. In the hotel that we were in, they didn't have a hotel in the town, or they didn't have one that could fit all of the employees. So we were at a different hotel about 45 minutes away. And it was very stressful. And one of the upper management folk, she asked me to do something. I don't remember what it was, but she was like, "Hey, will you do this before you leave tonight?" And I was like, "Yes, I will." And so then, because we had been working these crazy hours, I was in the middle of doing that. And my boss, who I think technically, if you're looking in like the org chart, he would have been under her, like below her, but not necessarily under her because he was like in a different department. And but she was higher ranking essentially. So he comes in, he's like, "Look, we're done for the day. Everybody needs to go home and rest. Go home." And I said, "Well, I will." I said, "But I've got to finish up this thing for so and so." And he said, "No, we're done. We've been working crazy long hours. It's time to go home or, back to the hotel and rest. And you can finish it tomorrow." And I was like, "Are you sure?" Because I did tell her that I would have it done. And he's like, "Go." So he was insistent. I was like, "Okay." Next day, she confronts me and she was like, "Why isn't this done?" And I protested. I was like, "Well, my boss," and I was like, "My boss told me." And she was like, "No, stop." She was like, "I don't care." She goes, "You told me that you were going to do something. I expect you to do it. Period." She was like, she wasn't accepting my boss told me, right? And it was a weird situation to be in because I'm like, I was thinking about it. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just tell my boss, like, F off, I'm doing this work? Like, I didn't really, so it was a weird, but it was the first reality that you need to deliver results, not excuses. Okay. And that, and I, that was probably a turning point for me. Before then, I would sometimes be like, well, I couldn't do it because of this or because of that. Right. I hadn't quite gotten on board fully with the deliver results. But here's the thing, when you deliver results, that is what makes your name, and what makes it good is when you deliver results. When you're hard on yourself, if you're like, look, I got to, and since then, I have done things like I've pulled all-nighters because I've been working on a project, and for whatever reason, things went awry. The project got behind, and I'm like, "Man, I got to deliver this." Like, maybe it's due, a Friday at 8 a.m., for my boss, and, it's Thursday night, Thursday evening, and I'm not quite done yet. So then I'm like, "All right, get that coffee going because I'm delivering." And then I would deliver. But and now you have to temper this, of course, right? Like, you can't necessarily just work crazy hours, always working overnight. Like, people will abuse it, and so you want to safeguard yourself against abuse. But on the other hand, when people know that you will go out of your way to make sure that you deliver, they will respect you, and they will let you know in a positive way, and they will let other people know you can count on this guy or this gal, right? That will be your reputation. And so I would advise people never get taken advantage of. I mean, people will abuse it, but at the same time, make sure that people know that you are willing to go the extra mile to make sure that you deliver. If you do that, that will go so well for you. And it kind of goes into my next story, which isn't so pleasant necessarily. This one was rough. So I was working as a web developer at a company, and I was brand new. So what happened? Here's how I got into web development. When I left the fastener company, I had been involved in a hacker space up in Charlotte, and a lot of people had encouraged me. They said, "Man, you're really into computers. You're coding for fun. Why don't you do it for a living?" And so they kind of coached me and got me going. And so what I ended up doing was, when my wife at the time, my fiance, moved to Jacksonville for a job, she decided, "Hey, you know what? I don't think I like this long distance relationship. Can you move down here?" And so I was like, "Okay, that seems like we'll make this happen." So I left the company I was working for and decided this is a good time to transition to a new line of work. So I said, "I'm going to come down and I'm going to take a year off, and I'm just going to study web development." And so that's what I did. After about a year, I met somebody and I was able to score a job, and I was working for a small startup. And initially I was kind of doing some development, but also kind of like, oh, what would you might call it? It was almost like I was an intern-ish, where I would do a lot of different things with the end goal of being, hey, once you get familiar with this and you learn the ropes a little better, you're going to be a bona fide developer. Like, you passed our interview, but we know that you're fresh and new, so you need to get familiar with the business and, familiar with doing certain things and just kind of in the real world, right? And so shortly after getting hired on, a month or two later, they were bought by a larger company. Cool. Larger company came along and they said, "Okay, well, we see that you're kind of in this weird state. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer you." My offer letter was a significant increase in pay, but it was to be, um, what was the role? QA. So I was going to do QA, and then it was kind of understood that I would move over to a developer role, like officially. Okay. And so as I started unofficially moving away from QA duties into development, I still had that title, which is different story for a different day, maybe. But now I'm doing some more development work. So one day I was working on a particular project and I was having a little bit of trouble with some code. It wasn't doing what I wanted. I was having some, so I asked a peer, I said, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think's going on here?" And he was like, "Well, I don't," he goes, "Why are you doing it that way?" And he's like, "Wouldn't it be easier to do it this other way?" And I said, "Well, that's not really what the she wasn't the project manager, but the person that I was delivering to." I was like, "That's not what she's really looking for." I said, and so anyway, after some conversation, I switched the direction I was going, and then I ran into a stumbling block on that one. So then I asked my direct manager, and he seemed kind of he seemed perplexed. He was like, "Well, why don't you know what you're doing?" And I was like, "Well, I do know." He's like, "Well," and so there was this like issue of whether or not I knew what I was doing, and whether or not I was going in the right direction. And I was like, I talked to the what is her role? I can't remember her role, but it was the woman who was basically saying, "This is what I want." This is she would give us the requirements for, and then we would do the development. And so I I I was struggling with it. I reached out to a friend who worked for a different company who was also a software developer, and I was like, "Hey, man, can you sit down with me and go over?" And so we, on my spare time, outside of work, I figured out how to make this work, and then ultimately, the end result is I delivered what was supposed to be delivered on time. Period. Now I struggled a little bit, and I had to do some additional work outside of standard hours, and I had to reach out to some friends and whatever. So later I'm like, "Hey, let's talk about getting that proper pay and getting the proper title." And they were like, "Yeah, about that. You're not really living up to the expectations." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Well, you didn't understand this thing at this one time." This was my supervisor at the time said. He was like, "Yeah, you didn't understand this one thing, so I recommended them that you didn't need you weren't ready to have this raise and to move on and be a bona fide developer with the developer pay." And I was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "First of all," I was like, "what you're saying isn't true." I said, "I understood exactly what the requirements were." I said, "As soon as I started talking to other people, they didn't understand, and they kind of suggested I go in a different direction, and I did, and maybe I shouldn't have. But at the end of the day, I delivered exactly what maybe she was a project manager. I'm just gonna go with that. I delivered exactly what the project manager wanted on time. She was extremely happy with it." And I said, "You can go ask her." She said, "This is exactly what I wanted." And what had happened was I started in that direction, got sidetracked, had some struggles, figured it out, ended up going back to my original solution, finishing up the solution, delivering it on time. So I was like, "What's the problem?" Like, I was successful. I delivered. And so this is my third point, which I don't think I mentioned it a moment ago. You need to champion your success. When you deliver, you need to make sure that people recognize it, because sometimes they will try to downplay it and they will say, "Well, no, no, that's not." No, I delivered on time. Yes, I struggled in between, but fine, I delivered. And I didn't use any additional resources from the company. Like I didn't drag anybody else into my project and from their work that they were trying to accomplish. Nope, I delivered. And that's how reality works sometimes. When you're working on a project, things go wrong. Man, if I could do a whole episode on projects that I've done where things have went wrong, right? Like and there's some pretty wild stories. But this is natural. And what I've learned since that point is that a lot of times when when you're talking to like your manager and they're getting an update, tell them what they need to know, not what you know. So since that moment, I had a boss one time and I would try to just kind of keep him apprised of what was going on. And I would say, "Well, yeah, I'm having a little bit of problem with this project. Or this is not working out right now." And I would try to tell him this, and he would just start asking questions, and then inevitably he wouldn't like the answers that he was getting. They weren't necessarily bad answers. He just didn't like he just didn't like the things that he was hearing. So what I learned was, you know, make sure that you're delivering quality of results and make sure you champion your success. But along the way, when you're giving your updates, and this maybe is a bonus, tell people what they need to know, not what you know. And what that can actually translate to is that you're giving them only the amount of information that they've got to know. Does my boss need to know that I'm struggling with something? Maybe. If I'm going to be delayed, right? Or if I'm going to put somebody else behind, then they absolutely do. But if I've still got time to work this out, right? Or if I've already figured it out, that's a big one. This is what one of the things that I learned was stop telling my boss that I had a problem that I've already since fixed, because that would just start the questioning round, and then he would inevitably find something he didn't particularly care for, and then I might actually make him upset over literally nothing, like literally nothing. And so this is what I learned, but so when you're telling people, tell them what they need to know, not what you know. You know that, hey, you're struggling right now, but maybe they don't need to know that. But then when you deliver, right? When you deliver, you need to champion your success. Because what happened was this company that I was working for, they tried to say that I didn't deliver. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I did deliver. You seem to and I think I told them at the time, I think I said, I have never missed a deadline on any of my projects, I think. And if there was, it would have been one. But I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that at that time I had never missed a deadline. And so I was like, no, I've always delivered, and it's always been exactly what has been asked of me. I met the requirements, and every great once in a while, yeah, I've even exceeded them. So you need to champion your successes, but you can't champion them if you don't have them, if you're not delivering, if they're not quality. If you're just doing mediocre, then like whatever, nobody's going to really be impressed. But and so you want to make sure that what I try to do when I deliver, I try to over deliver just a little bit. I don't want to overdo it too much, because if there is a point for which you're not going to get recognition, but there is a point where you can deliver results, and you deliver a little bit more and than people were expecting. If you can, it's not always the case. And they will that's something for you to boast about. Like, yeah, I did this. And you can also, in part of your boasting, when it's time to toot your horn, you get to say, this is what they said. So if you over deliver a little bit, then a lot of people will be like, wow, that was really impressive. Right? They don't just say, hey, thanks, that this works out really well. They might say, that's really impressive. And that's what goes toward championing that success. You could say, no, look, this person was not only they were not only pleased with it, they were very happy with it. They were very impressed. They said so. Right. So again, deliver results, not excuses. Deliver quality, aim for quality. Yeah, and again, all of this gets tempered based on it. Like if you tell your wife, "Hey, I'll do the laundry," there's not a whole lot of extra quality that you can deliver on that, right? Like, you fold the laundry, you put it away. There's not a lot of quality that you can be impressive with, but you can deliver results and not excuses. Why didn't you why didn't you get the laundry done? Well, don't deliver excuses. And, and I think these are the kind of things that will make you more successful. Now let's talk about some things related to the Libertarian Party. So, because I've been making some people mad lately because I've been very critical. like I always have been. The difference is, I think one crowd had gotten used to me criticizing their opponents, and they hadn't quite felt what it was like for them to get criticized by me. So I've been critical of some people. I even got called a hall monitor libertarian. Like, is an absurd. Like, okay, if that's the name you got to use, that's fine, whatever. But this is, and then I pointed out to this person, I said, y'all weren't saying that when I was critical of your opponents here, 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 and here, right? I I've been doing the same thing. I've been critical of the results that people are delivering because we should be, because they're not quality, or because people are exaggerating them. So number one, here's a couple things that you should never ever do, ever. Okay. Number one, don't take credit that isn't yours. And I don't really have any stories of me doing this per se, because I don't like, I'm sure that I have, I just don't have any that stand out that I can remember. But it probably did happen. But as a rule of thumb, I don't take credit for other people's work. Even as the chair of the affiliate here, the local chair, I will tell people, like, yeah, I did these things. I helped accomplish these things. And then I'll follow it up with, or a lead in with, these things couldn't have been done without the hard work of volunteers. So I make sure that credit goes to where credit is due. And what I tell people in leadership, you don't have to run around and try to take credit for everything. You can just say, yep, the people that I'm working with, they're the reason that I was successful, because everybody will know that people know what leadership is. People know that if you're in leadership and you're busy telling everybody how your team is the one that delivered, everybody already knows you're the one that led the team. So you don't like it's kind of unwritten rule, and people get it. And the right people, the people that are important and matter, they're the ones that really know it. And so you don't have to necessarily, you don't have to take credit that isn't yours. And by that, it can be straight up somebody else's credit, or it can be exaggerated or made up credit. Like sometimes people will exaggerate things. So I get a lot of compliments from people when I where I work. And I'm not boasting and kind of being whatever. I'm not acting. What's the word? I don't even know the word I want to use. But anyway, I get them. But it's not that I need to hear them. What a compliment says to me is that I've delivered. And if you're delivering well, you will have plenty of credit of your own to have. You don't have to worry about exaggerating. You don't have to worry about um, making it up. Okay. So how does this fit with the LP? Well, lately, anything that Trump does that's good, people have been like, well, that's a win. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not a win for you. It may be a win for somebody, but it's not a win for you. So let's break this down. If you voted for Trump, right, because you felt, well, for whatever reason, well, no, actually, I take it back. If you voted for Trump and you voted for him for specific things, you said, hey, look, I think he's going to free Ross. He's going to put a libertarian in his cabinet. I keep saying that. If you go back in my podcast, you'll notice that every time I say libertarian in the candidate. I don't know why I keep saying it. Anyway, so like if those are the reasons that you voted for him, when he does those things, you can say, yeah, that's a win for me, right? Because, hey, that's why I voted for him. But if he does something else unrelated, right? Like he picks a cabinet member that you happen to really like, but you had no idea, that's not a win for you. That may be his win if it ends up being, if that person ends up delivering something good, that may be his win, but it's not really your win. And so this is where I've been criticizing people. I'm like, well, no, we have to be grounded in reality. And if you only voted for Trump for a few things, if you voted for Trump and your explicit reason was, I want Kamala Harris to lose, that was okay, great. When he won, that's the credit you get. You don't get nothing else, right? This is what it means to not exaggerate or take credit that isn't due to you, right? If and I mentioned this in, I think it was episode 414, where my wife was kind of pushing back and she was like, well, wait a minute. If your boss hires you and, hires you to reduce the budget in the company. And then you find clever ways that nobody was expecting to reduce the budget. Isn't that still a win? And I said, yes. However, keep in mind that if my boss hires me to do like to lower the budget, right? Like that's part of my role. Then they have vetted me and they said, based on the things that have come out of your interview, I believe that yes, you're going to do this. Maybe you have a track record. Maybe I can look back and say, here's where I lowered the budget in this other company that I worked for. And here are the things that I did. Right. And they go toward that. And so, yeah, in a sense, if somebody does something that's unexpected, but is still in line with the rationale that you used in the first place, then yes, that is a win for you. But if they do something entirely different, like if I, let's say I'm supposed to reduce the budget, and that's why I got hired, and then I come in and I observe a process that it's that my job is to look at financials and look for where we can cut, but I happen to see that there's a process here that is inefficient, and maybe I just happen to have a good idea and I deliver a good idea, and then that makes these people more efficient in whatever they're doing. Right now, strictly speaking, you might say, well, that falls under reducing the budget. But if that's, I wasn't brought in to help with processes. I was brought in to identify maybe waste or something like that. So my boss could be excited, but the truth is, it wouldn't be a win for him or her. It would only be a win. If this is how I think. This is my thinking, right? It's not a win for him or her. If they brought me in to do one thing and I happened to just stumble across something else that I could do and delivered a really good result. That is my win, but that's not their win. And so when we're voting, and why do I say this? Because you might say, DL, you're just trying to take steam from people, right? Like, isn't that what you're doing? No, this is especially true in politics. Like you might get away with it in business, but in politics, it's much different because in politics, things get spun all the time. Somebody doesn't deliver on their promises, they spin the reason why. So the best way that we can hold a candidate who gets elected accountable is to make sure that we have a very rigid view of what it means to deliver and what success looks like. Because candidates, politicians, they will try to spin anything and everything in their favor. If they failed to do something, they'll spin it in their favor. If they did something that nobody was asking for, they'll spin it in their favor, right? And so what can get lost is, hey, I voted for you to do this. I voted for you to not do this, right? Maybe you don't like something that's happening and you want to put a stop to it. So you're like, I voted for you to come in and put a stop to this. And so by having this rigid view of results, particularly in politics, it allows us to hold them accountable better because we really don't. I mean, if you want to be honest, we don't really hold them accountable very well because they spin too easily. They spin everything and anything in their favor. And then 4 years later, people forget about all the promises that were made, all the reasons that we voted for this particular person. And so therefore we just say, well, these are all wins because they were good things. Well, again, that kind of ties into the resulting that I was talking about 2 days ago on episode 414. Right. And if you didn't listen to that episode, I encourage you to go listen and, talk about resulting and what that is and how we cannot judge the quality of a decision based on the outcome of something, right? Based on the results. And I think you'll learn something there. But this ties into that same thing. So we have to have this rigid view because otherwise we're just going to get bamboozled as we have been. All right. Another thing is, and this is something that I wish my libertarian peers would really, really focus on. Keep generating wins. Okay. It's easier to give credit where it's due if you're constantly generating wins. But if you're not generating wins, well, then what do you got to do to make yourself look good? You've got to either exaggerate it, take somebody else's, or make something up altogether. Right. But if you're delivering wins, then you have something to talk about. you can say, nope, I did this. And it keeps you relevant. Do you know how many people in the Libertarian Party, they're like, I was a candidate for office. And you're like, oh, really? And then you look it up. And it was like 20 years ago. And I'm like, you're riding on being a candidate who didn't even win, but you're riding on being a candidate from 20 years ago? The hell have you done in 20 years? That would never fly in business. Like, imagine I went to my boss and I said, yeah, I did this really, I built this really great thing 20 years ago. Okay, but what'd you do today? What'd you do yesterday? What'd you do last week, last month, this year? Right? What did you do? Because when you're in business, if you're not delivering, and it doesn't have to be, again, phenomenal stuff, but if you're not delivering, you're just kind of, then that puts you in a position to be let go because you're not useful. The same thing applies in politics. If you're not delivering, then you're not useful. So go deliver. And find something new. Okay, you ran for office 20 years ago and maybe you're not wanting to run anymore. Then work with somebody and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to mentor a new candidate and I'm going to give them all the experience that I'm going to tell them about, all my experiences. I'm going to coach them and I'm going to help get them, based on all my observations, based on my experience, based on talking with other people, maybe your network, people that, you can connect them with, right? That is a win. Like, hey, guess what? I ran for office 20 years ago, but that's not really important. Here's these 5 people that I've helped run for office. And here are the results that they got. Remember, they got. And if you're the leader, remember what I said a moment ago about leadership? If you're a leader, you can tell everybody that you participated in something and somebody else did the work. They get the credit. And we all know what credit you get for being the leader. So you don't have to talk about it. You can say, hey, I coached this person and here are the results. Here's what they did. Here's how well they, here's their name in the paper. Here are their election results that did, far better than any other candidate before them. Right. And you can just simply say they did it. They did it. They did all the work because they probably did anyway. Right. But you get some credit for being a participant in that role, particularly somebody if you're like in leadership or you're coaching. So constantly generate new wins because I feel like too many libertarians, they ride off of yesteryear's success. Stop it. Go do something new. Stay relevant. Let's see. I like this. Joe Hanush says, when will I mentor DL for a candidate? DL is not running for office. Not now, not ever. Sorry to break the news to you. I have no intention. Now, I say not ever. What do they say? Never say never, right? So is it possible in 10 years I might be convinced to do so? Maybe. But for right now, I have no intentions. There's no intentions for the foreseeable future for me to run for office. So good luck with that. Hopefully you can succeed in that goal. Um, but these are the lessons that I'm actually even giving my son. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you an extra bonus story before I close the show. Okay. One more quick story. So my son is 5. Okay. So if you guys want to know, like, is DL tough in real life? I'm going to show you. Okay. My son is 5. He came home the other day. Now, if you know anything about toddlers, you know that when they get tired, they are the goofiest creatures on the planet, right? They can be angry. They can be just weird. Like sometimes when my son gets tired, he just drags and he acts like he can't. He's like, my foot hurts. I can't lift my foot. And you're like, something wrong with your foot. And he's like, I'm just too tired. And then what he'll do is he'll do this like really exaggerated, like he can't lift his foot, but he totally can. He's just acting as if like somehow all of a sudden there's a huge weight on his foot. And then he'll like pretend to lift it, then pretend to drop it, and then fall down and just be really dramatic. And he'd be like, see, Dad, I just can't walk. It's somewhere between amusing and annoying. Not even gonna lie. So he comes over the other day. He's tired. No, I'm sorry. It's not that he came home. We came home. We came home from our trip. And he was tired from flying and all that stuff. And my wife, his mom, asked him, hey, put away all your clothes from your luggage. And he's like, I'm just too tired. And so then he's like dragging butt and he's like, he's making excuses. He's like, Dad, I'm tired. Here's what I said. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. I was like, I don't care. Get it done. It's like, it's yours. Do it. And so he did like a couple more things. And then I decided that the toddler was going to win in this particular scenario, because the other truth about toddlers is that you can be demanding all you want, but there is a point where they win. End of story. Because you can't force them to, like, especially a tired one. So I gave in a little bit, but we do try to hold that standard. And like I tell him, I'm like, look, he's heard this many times. He'll say like, Dad, remember when you said this? I'll say, yep, let's go do that. We honor our word in this house, right? So like I teach him, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, do it. When you do something, don't make excuses. It should be good. He does online homework. He's got homework that he has to do online, and then he gets graded immediately. And I'll look at it, and I don't really scold him, but I let him know in a pleasant way that I'm not happy when he gets anything less than 90%. And it's not because like, hey, you should get all A's 100%. He's an Asian, not a Bayesian, none of that stuff. Although kind of, sort of, but mostly because I know what he's capable of. And so I'm like, I know what you're capable of. We're not going to allow laziness to creep in. You need to deliver, and you need to do it right. And that is the expectation. And it doesn't matter that you're 5. We're holding you to it anyway. All right. What else we got in here? Good morning, everyone from the True Few. Good morning to you, and as well, good morning to everybody else that has tuned in or has recently tuned in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you found it informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Let me back up a little bit here real quickly. Tomorrow at noon, I will be having Spike Cohen on. Okay, so make sure if you're able, you can tune in at noon. It's going to be a great conversation with Spike. We're going to talk about activism, and he's going to give us all his best tips, and he's going to catch us up with where he is with You Are the Power. In the morning, I will have an episode. It's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be a very short one, just to kind of keep the consistency, or I may have a dad on in the morning. I've been talking to somebody. He might be able to make it, a brand new dad. So hopefully we can make that happen. But if not, I'll just do a normal show in the morning. And it will be Fridays are going to be the dad talk day. Speaking of, let me get back to my closing here. Where was I? Make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel. You know what? I got that out of order. Let me back up here. Since I was talking about dads, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. Dad Talk is my series where I invite everyday dads to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, just dads choose the topic, and it's my way of raising dad voices. So if you know a dad or you are a dad, you want to come on the show and you want to just chit chat about whatever. Could be mental health issues, which I've had before. Could be challenges with your teenager, that you're willing to air. I mean, let's not air out dirty laundry. It could be, getting a new job, providing for your family, your methodology for parenting, whatever you want to come and talk about. We're going to talk about it. Right. And I'm not judging you. We're just raising dad voices. So let me know if that's you. We will get you on the show. At any rate, make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. And I want you to remember, last but not least, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you tomorrow. But for now, I'm out.